Some people cast hardly any shadow at all. Some cast long, deep shadows that endure for centuries. I am Jan, this is my Chan, and here we discuss books from an adult perspective. And without further ado, on to the show. We're back with Apophis, who is free from his prison and threatens to fully manifest in the coming days unless Carter and Sadie Kane can do the impossible and stop him. And that's to say nothing about Zaya dealing with new powers manifesting, Amos dealing with the House of Life as Chief Lector, or Walt in that curse that threatens to take his life soon. What will happen to our magicians as they try to save the world? Our story begins in a museum, like always. This time it's in Dallas, the 51st Gnome. The Kanes are visiting the Dallas Museum of Art. There's even a party. Doesn't all this seem a little bit familiar? The Kanes are there to visit the King Tut exhibit and warn the magicians that Apophis is targeting a specific artifact. They mention he's already destroyed several copies in cities around the globe. The Kanes introduce their team of trainees, Alyssa, Walt, and Felix, to J.D. Grissom, head of the Texas Gnome. He takes them all to see the Tut exhibit. When Sadie gets separated from the group, a glowing apparition speaks to her, telling her to break him out to help them understand the scroll. He also advises her to save the golden box, whatever that means. In the Tut exhibit, they fill in JD that they're looking for the Book of Overcoming Apophis, specifically the version written by Setney, who is apparently a villainous magician. Before they can even begin to understand the scroll, Apophis attacks. JD runs outside to protect his wife, while the Canes stay back to protect the scroll. Apophis brings two Creo Sphinxes, ram-headed sphinxes, to life. The forces of chaos attack, with Apophis taunting the magicians as he destroys the book, and then goes for a golden box. Sadie tells everyone to protect the box as the Creo Sphinxes close in and artifacts begin attacking them as well. Walt protects Sadie, who channels Isis to cast a single divine word, Ma'at. It works, helping to restore order to the museum, but it knocks her out in the process. In her sleep, Sadie has a vision of Isis and her mother. They mention the last person to summon the power of Ma'at was Hatshepsut herself. They tell Sadie not to blame herself for the deaths and to convince her father of their plan and hope to see Ruby again.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Then she speaks with Anubis briefly, who says he's breaking the rules to see her, even if she was close to death. Sadie awakens. They're still at the Dallas Museum. They were able to save the Golden Cabinet, but the Texas magicians all perished in the fight.
No, God!
All that was left of the magicians was a crater and the symbol for Isfet, or chaos, burned into the grass. They used Freak the Griffin pulling a boat to fly out of there. Portals have been too risky lately since Apophis began his attacks. When they land at Brooklyn House, Carter sends the trainees to bed, has Khufu lock up the cabinet in the library, and tells Sadie and Bass that they need to talk. They head down into the library where Cleo is at work organizing scrolls. They request some privacy and her and Khufu head upstairs. When the Canes can't make sense of the box, Bass tells them it's a shadow box, where a shadow was stored. Then Sadie tells them about the apparition and her vision. The Canes try asking Bast about shadows and if gods have them, but she says it would be better to ask Thoth. The kids also mention not wanting to turn to Plan B because of how dangerous it is. They're interrupted by Khufu coming downstairs, telling Carter that he has a call from his scrying bowl upstairs, and he rushes off. Zaya is calling, telling him how everyone knows what's happened in Texas, and how the rebel magicians have sent out a broadcast demanding the Canes surrender, and threatening to attack if they don't. They've already attacked their allies around the world. Zaya changes the conversation when Ross shows up in the oil. She's been watching him during the day because most of the gods don't want to. Plus, she doesn't trust them. When Zaya hangs up, Carter checks on Plan B, a Shabti figurine of Apophis. He's shaken out of his thoughts by Horus arriving in the form of a pigeon, speaking to him from the balcony. Horus doesn't know much about magic, but does mention that the ancient Egyptian word for shadow and statue were shut, because they both represented a smaller form of a thing. He tells him to seek out Thoth for more answers.
Thank you, Catherine Obvious.
At dinner that evening, Carter fills in the others on what he's learned and what happened last night. He mentioned how they might be able to use Apophis' shadow to execrate him. Plan C, if you will. The plan is to visit Thoth and see what he knows about shadow banishing spells. Some of the trainees have been attending a local academy, and now everyone plans to attend the school dance that night, and Sadie pressures Carter into going as well. They all get dressed up and go, except for Walt, who stays behind to rest because his chronic pain is flaring up again. At the dance, Sadie pairs Carter with her friend Lacey, and then faces off against the school bully, Drew Tanaka. Both girls happen to be from Camp Half-Blood and Daughters of Aphrodite, but Sadie wouldn't know about that. Anubis interrupts the girls' conversation to give Sadie a message. He's able to appear there because there was a revolutionary battle that occurred there. He tells her that the shoot is the right idea, that the shadow is a remnant of the soul, like a backup copy. He also says she may need the help of a magician, but his trial is tomorrow at sunset. He also tells her that the spirits of the dead have been vanishing for some reason.
What do you mean?
But their conversation is cut short by the appearance of the wind god, Shu. The gods have not approved of Anubis and Sadie becoming close, which I can agree with. He's too old for her, and she is a minor. Anyway, Shu knocks everyone around the two unconscious. Anubis says they can't be with each other because he lacks a mortal host, and then Shu whisks him away. A Russian boy, Leonid, walks into the courtyard. It's the one from the Russian gnome last spring. He's there to talk with Sadie. He started following the path of Shu since last time. He's there to warn them about an impending attack on the first gnome. Sadie tells Carter she'll go to the first gnome, while him and Walt visit Thoth.
I think we should split up.
She races off with Leonid to a nearby relic she helped have installed on school grounds to portal them to Cairo. However, the portal spits them out 100 meters over the city, and Leonid uses the power of Shu to save them. In the first gnome, they visit Amos in the Hall of Ages. Amos uses a Madwest spell to help them understand each other better, as Leonid only spoke Russian. Leonid tells them that Sarah Jacobi and her forces are working with the Apophis and are hiding at Abu Simbel. Amos has been using Iskander's war map to move their forces around the world to combat the forces of chaos. He tells Sadie that Apophis plans to rise on the autumn equinox. Sadie tells him her plan to test their shadow theory, and he sends Zaya with her. Their first stop, the Duat. At the same time, miles away. Carter got the trainees back to Brooklyn House from the dance and speaks with Walt and Bast on the terrace. He takes Walt with him and leaves Bast to guard Brooklyn House. They fly Freak the Griffin to Memphis, Tennessee, where Toad's base of operations is being attacked by an army of demons. Carter realizes this explains the recent natural disasters reported on the news. Initially, he doesn't want Walt to join in the fight, but Walt is insistent. They dive bomb the enemy. Carter summons a blue combat avatar and Walt riding a sphinx into battle. Thoth is throwing hieroglyphs down at the enemy like grenades. When the enemy is temporarily defeated, Thoth mentions that they'll attack again before sunrise. They've been attacking every 6 hours. Then he invites them inside to talk. Indoors, Thoth has Walt and Carter rest before speaking with them. Carter awakens to find Walt mid-conversation with Thoth about how it's never been done and how Walt doesn't have much time left. He changes the subject when he spots Carter, telling him how he's been under siege for a week and likely only has 2 days left, and how the other gods cannot help because Apophis is keeping everyone divided. Then he tells them about the Shadow Execration spell, but is also being tight-lipped about the details. He can't divulge much because the other gods are already upset with him for giving up so many of their secrets to mankind, like writing and magic. He does tell them about the Book of Thoth, how it contains many secret details about the gods, but it was stolen by a magician years ago. The book might be able to guide them to Apophis' shadow, but it was hidden by Setni before he died, thousands of years ago. He goes on to explain how Setni, an evil genius, sought to become a god. Setni has evaded judicial punishment in the underworld through his clever ways, but Osiris has been cracking down on rebellious ghosts. He tells them they can plead with Osiris/Julius to give Setni a lighter sentence if he helps them. On the Griffin flight back to Brooklyn House, Walt explains that he'll die by sunset tomorrow, and goes on about how Anubis has a plan to extend his life, and how it's connected to his new ability to disintegrate things. Then he accidentally disintegrates the reed boat, and they're stuck dangling from ropes tied to Freak as they land on Brooklyn House. Bast is on the roof. She's on Raw babysitting duty, and says Sadie Shabti is waiting downstairs. They exchange information with the Shabti, and Sadie realizes the apparition she saw must be Setni. She says they'll rendezvous before sunset at the Hall of Judgment. Carter fills in Bast on the plan. She is to take the Brooklyn House magicians to Egypt after school. Amos will need backup in the fight. The Kanes, Walt, and Zaya will rendezvous in Egypt for the final battle. Then him and Walt prepare to catch a boat to the underworld. At a ruined shrine to Isis in Cairo, Sadie calls on the goddess to open a portal into the Duat. She has a mind conversation with the goddess for daring to intervene in her dating life. Then her and Zaya travel to Sunny Acres, the nursing home of the gods. In the empty nursing home, Zaya has a blackout and begins throwing fireballs around until Sadie talks her down. Apparently, she's been having a lot of these episodes lately. She's also found herself empathizing with Ra the more time she spends with him. Zaya also tells her that Amos has been channeling the power of Set. Sadie isn't sure how she can help. They find the elderly gods having a beach day on the shores of the Lake of Fire. Zaya goes to break up a fight while Sadie speaks with Towaret, who has been taking care of Bess. She tells Towaret her plan. To use Bess's shadow to revive him. Towaret tells her the last time she saw his shadow was on a date in Sais, city of the hunting goddess Neith. With that, Sadie and Zaya make their leave. They're picked up by Carter and Walt aboard the Egyptian Queen, the boat of the Kane family. They reach the Hall of Judgment in 20 minutes. Walt talks to the gatekeeper to get them into the hall, somehow guessing the right thing to say.
Coincidence? I think not!
They interrupt their father during court proceedings. He's in the middle of a trial. They fill him in on what they've learned lately and their plan. He isn't happy but still supports them. Before they can ask for his help, the trial of the state versus Setni begins. Setni tries using divine words to manipulate the judges, but Osiris is not having it. Sadie interrupts and tells her dad that they need his help. Setni tells them he can guide them to the book, help them find Apophis' shadow, and translate the spell to exorcise his shadow. But they will need to split up. Sadie and Walt to go find Bess's shadow and use Walt's amulet making skills to capture it and use it to awaken Bess. Zaya and Carter go with Setni to find the Book of Thoth he stole and hid. He also tells them that Walt helping with Bess's shadow may cost him his life. And with that cheery bit of news, Osiris unfortunately agrees to give custody of Setni to his children. They rest in the underworld and arrive in the mortal world by late morning with less than 24 hours to... It's the end of the world! Sadie and Walt have already departed to Sais, and Carter and Zaya take the Egyptian queen to the Nile River. Setni says they're going to the ruins of Memphis and follow Zaya to the wheelhouse to tell Bloodstained Blade. That's when Set appears on deck to talk with Carter. He's there to tell him not to worry about his uncle following the path of Set, and to warn him about the giant hippo, and vanishes as quickly as he appears. The hippo attacks the Egyptian queen, catapulting Zaya into the river as Carter engages it in combat, but he's not winning. Setni tells him a spell to say, Hapi Uha I Pua. Hapi, rise and attack. Hapi, the god of the Nile River, rises out of it and quickly dispels the monster. Then he offers to help Carter, who requests that Hapi help transport them to where they need to go. Setni tells him, specifically this time, that they're going to the Serapeum, or Temple of the Apis Bull. Happy gives Carter and Zaya some happy pills, tells them they're heading towards a trap, and they turn into water and travel instantaneously towards their destination. They solidify at the end, and Carter promptly loses his lunch. As they make their way down, Zaya and Setni talk about the Apis Bull and how it was a vessel for Osiris, and how eventually the Greeks came along and called Osiris Apis as Serapis. Setni takes them through the secret tunnels of the temple, undiscovered by archaeologists. He stops at one point to perform a disenchantment spell, and Zaya takes this opportunity to show Carter that she's wearing the golden scarab that represents Ra as Capri. Setni then leads them into a secret chamber. He plans for them to distract the bull statue while he retrieves the book, and when it comes to life, they run into the tunnels to avoid it. The bull corners them in another chamber and shoots a laser beam at them.
Frickin' laser beams attached to their heads!
Carter summons a combat avatar, but it's not enough. Then Zaya channels the power of Capri and destroys the bull. Then she passes out, and Carter summons water to help cool her off, but it barely helps. Setni appears and tells him that he's found the Book of Thoth. Setni gets them out of there, and Carter rushes Zaya inside to try and heal her. He allows Setni to give directions to Bloodstained Blade, giving him authority to give orders to the demon.
Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind?
Some time passes with Carter sitting beside Zaya's unconscious form, and then Bloodstained Blade begins chopping down the door to get to Carter. We cut to Sadie's POV several hours ago, where her and Walt arrived in the Nile Delta and used Philip of Macedonia to traverse the swamp to the ruins. On the way, Walt tries telling Sadie what him and Anubis have been discussing, but he doesn't get the chance. They've already arrived at the ruins of Sais. They run into the goddess Neith, who changes the environment to a memory of the past, then challenges Sadie and Walt to survive till sunset if they want help finding Bess's shadow, and with that, they turn and run. Sadie devises a plan where they will use their Shen amulets to split up and teleport one another whenever Neith gets too close to one of them. It works until Sadie and Walt spot Bess's shadow and forget about the plan. Neith corners them, but Sadie begins stalling for time.
I'm not stalling anything.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You're doing it right now.
It works long enough for her to activate a spell and win. The temple and the memory begin crumbling, and Sadie wonders about how they'll capture Bess's shadow when Anubis interrupts, telling Walt it's time.
No, God!
Anubis helps a dying Walt perform the spell to capture the shadow of Bess, taking great pains to explain to Sadie how to do the spell and how to use it in the execration. He uses a Hanem spell to join the wax statue to the shadow and gives it to Sadie. As she sends it away to find Bess, Walt's dome passes away.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
And then he is awake again, and tells Sadie that Setni's quest was a trap, and tells her to use the portal he summoned. That's when she realizes Walt is hosting Anubis, and she flees, too distraught by the whole ordeal.
At the same time, miles away.
Carter is facing off against Bloodstained Blade, and he casts a protection spell around Zaya's unconscious form. The Egyptian queen is making its way down the River of Night towards the land of demons. Horus reminds Carter to use the power of the gods, and he reaches into the Dua and pulls out the crooked flail of Ra. He sees Setni trying to make a break for it with the Book of Thoth and uses the ribbons of Hathor against him. Then Zaya, finally awake, vaporizes BSB, and the boat crashes into the shore. The force knocks them from the boat, but Zaya conjures a vulture to help them land. Then she gives Carter some magic healing balm to apply to his wounds. They have a short picnic while they watch a bound Setni try to crawl away. Zaya explains how she's nervous about being a host for Ra. She also tells Carter to keep the instruments of Ra because she feels that Ra needs the support of Horus. Then they retrieve Setni and the Book of Thoth. Setni agrees to lead them to the shadow and disguises them as demons using magic. After a long, arduous walk, they make it to the Sea of Chaos. Setni tells them that the Serpent's shadow
He said it! He said it!
is on an island where the symbol for Ma'at, a huge white obelisk, stands. They make their way towards it, resisting the pull of chaos the whole time, thanks to Zaya and the power of Ra. At the base of the obelisk, Zaya casts a summoning spell to retrieve the shadow of Apophis. It sends out a distress signal when it appears to call the demons to come to its aid. Then Setni betrays them, binding them with the spell and taking the book. Then Sadie appears, binds up Setni, and performs the shadow binding spell herself. She tells the others how Setni lied, and the execration spell is much simpler than he made it out to be.
I was lying. I'm a fucking lie.
Then they drag Setni all the way back to shore, where an army of demons are waiting. As they prepare to make a last stand, the elderly gods come to save them. And amongst them is a limo, and driving the limo is Bess. He ushers them into the limo, but in the confusion they had somehow lost Setni and the Book of Thoth. Bess drives them back to the shore of the River of Night, where they just barely catch the boat of the sun god on his nightly journey. Aboard the boat, Ra greets them all and actually called Zaya by her name. Then he touches her scarab amulet and begins crumbling into sand. He's being reborn, becoming one with Zaya. Together they lead the sunboat out of the Duat and towards Giza. Sadie comforts Carter, who feels weird about the situation, and Sadie confesses how she felt weird when she learned about Anubis and Walt. They agree to deal with it later, if they survive. At the pyramids of Giza, they see Apophis being held back, barely, by Bast all by herself.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Now come on now.
Ra, Bess, and Sobek go to help her fend off the serpent. Ra tells him that the first gnome needs the Kane's help first. Ra also tells Carter that he needs to lead the house as pharaoh. They turn into birds and fly down to the Great Sphinx entrance. On the way down, they find a wounded Leonid and promise to be back for him. Just outside the Hall of Judgment, battle rages. Sarah Jacoby and her ilk against the magicians of Brooklyn's house. Again.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Together they fight the enemies who are blocking the doors to the hall, where Amos is fighting against Quay and Sarah Jacoby himself. Walt/Anubis helps destroy the doors so they can go help. They find Amos hosting Set and holding his own against the enemy magicians, but they were just biding their time and quickly turn the tables, binding him in magical ropes. Sarah Jacoby threatens them, then attacks Carter and Sadie. When she tries to kill Sadie, Walt/Anubis had enough and lose their rage on the magicians. Amos is freed, and Quay channels the power of Apophis. Amos then calls the magicians to battle. Quay knocks out the trainees and then uses the last of his life force to cast a spell to bring down the house. Sadie uses the power of Isis to restore Ma'at and save everyone and the gnome. She passes out briefly, and then Carter reminds her they need to get to the surface still. Amos tells Carter to lead them into battle. First, he uses his Ba to summon the gods to war, and then together the magicians and the gods charge into battle against Apophis himself. Their forces are divided, some in the Duat as they fight Apophis from all sides. But in a moment of distraction, Zaya is swallowed by Apophis. Carter lets loose his rage and is able to wound the snake, but it isn't enough still. Him and Sadie have Bass and Bess guard them from the serpent as they begin the shadow execration spell. When they complete the spell, the snake begins to disappear, but he warns the Kanes that by pushing him away, they've pushed the gods away too, because Ma'at and Chaos are linked. He is cut off literally when Zaya bursts out of his neck, decapitating Apophis. Spirits of the dead flow out of his corpse, free at last. Then Ra rises from the wound and quickly withdraws from the mortal realm with the other gods, repeating what Apophis said about order and chaos being linked. No! The Kanes take Zaya to the infirmary, where many injured magicians are being healed, and they find out Leonid is supposed to pull through as well. Carter spots Setney, who disappears as quickly as he appeared. Amos calls a gathering in the Hall of Ages. As they head there, they run into Felix, who has found his path, the god of ice.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Amos thanks Carter and Sadie for all they've done, then offers Carter the throne. Carter gives a speech, telling the magicians that he will rule them as pharaoh, but for now will be an ordinary magician and teen, while Chief Lector Amos handled day-to-day operations. Then they go to see their parents, where a celebration is going on in the Hall of Judgment. Osiris congratulates them on a job well done, and even forgives them for losing Setney. Ruby talks to Sadie privately, and then sends them back to Brooklyn House. We cut to 2 weeks later when Zaya and Carter are on a date at the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota. Zaya tells Carter that Ra has truly retreated into the heavens, and she doesn't think she'll get to be the Eye of Ra again, at least until the next Doomsday scenario. Then she asks Carter if it will be okay to live and teach at Brooklyn House. He says yes, of course. Sadie's POV for the last time shows us what her and Ruby were talking about in private. Boys, of course, blah blah blah, she will see Walt again, and how she doesn't have to choose. The juiciest bit is when she mentions other gods and rival magicians from outside Egypt. That same night, they got a portal to the House of Rest, where Tourette tells them how they brought new life to the old gods, and Bess says that he's going to set up a home on the lakeshore for him and Tourette, who are official now. As they made their way back to the portal, Bast is there and shows them a magic video message of the Hall of the God. It's a video of Horus giving his thank you speech as Pharaoh of the Gods, and then they say a final goodbye to Bast, who must also retreat from the mortal world. When they portal back to Brooklyn House, Walt is waiting on the roof. He asks Sadie if he can stay. She says yes, and they dance. And that's where the story ends.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Sadie leaves with the final thought, wondering about the future, about Setney, about her mother's warning regarding other gods, even about the unexplained magic in Long Island. But in the end, like always, she invites those with the blood of the pharaohs to come to Brooklyn House, where the Kanes will be waiting. I love how Zaya kept having to be reminded that dangerous and insane are main staples of being around the Kane family. It's adorable. Bess and Tourette forever, by the way. Took Bess long enough to come to his senses and see the people who already value him for who he is. The Walt Anubis Sadie thing was just... it left a weird taste in my mouth. Definitely a choice, one of which I find highly suspect. Carter and Zaya, on the other hand, were very cute. They're both nerds, except Zaya is effortlessly cool. I also like that she was always destined to host Ra. Writing has a great way of making things come full circle and tying up as many loose ends as possible while leaving others open for future stories. Like how it all came back to connections and sympathy, finding the things that tie people and magic together. But overall, a wonderfully written send-off to a magical world of gods, demons, and magicians. The Kane Chronicles will always be memorable to me almost solely because of the fact that magic is, at its core, about turning words into reality, and I think that's beautiful. But that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up with my latest reading adventures. Bye!
Bye!